Well, hello, hello, and welcome to everybody. It's Wednesday evening. It is the middle of spring. Well, not the middle of spring, but we're definitely getting there. It is getting warm over here. It feels good. We're in the like low 70s. I'm feeling really good. The excuse me, the pollen is heavy. I say I'm feeling good, but that being said, my head is full of pollen. If you are from this area, you know what I'm talking about. If you're planning to move here, get ready. The pollen here can get really thick and frustrating for if you're from here, maybe you can mention it in the comments, but probably in about, I'd say, a good month to month and a half. Um, and it just like I used to not even feel it, but then I woke up about a month ago and I started feeling this weird pressure and headaches in my obviously in my head, and I didn't know what it was coming from. I thought I was like, maybe I'm not drinking enough water or something, and it turns out it clearly over the course of the next few weeks came and went over and over, and I could tell this is definitely pollen. And so this is what people talk about when they say that they're getting their like allergies and just that it's that springtime flare. So we just get a huge heavy film of pollen every year. And like I was sweeping off our back porch and it was from all the yellow you'd see, on the ground. But then literally 3, 4 minutes later, you could see another layer start forming again. There's a lot here. There's even a car wash around the corner, and on the corner of the car wash on the street, there's a big car, an old car, and they painted it yellow for pollen, and it says on there something like "Time to get your car washed" or something like that. Because it's a normal thing here that pollen is a big deal. So be ready for that, especially if you are allergic or you have lots of sinus stuff acting up. Excuse me. Excuse me. That's what this is from. So that's number one. But number two is it's springtime, and I'm excited about the springtime almost more than I think I ever have. And it's led to a lot of activity in real estate. I'm excited to talk to you about that. I have some thoughts. We're seeing the last few months. I started making some guesses, and I was kind of back and forth about what I thought the market might do. On one hand, from the standpoint of, I definitely thought that the prices would increase, and I still think, and they are increasing. But the part that I was kind of leaving kind of dangling out there is what's going to really happen with how much houses are going to cost on a month to month basis, the interest rates. And that, I was saying, hey, I expect them to drop. Don't know exactly when. The Feds might be dropping their rates, or a lot of people talking about that. That's been a discussion for the last few months, which I there's no reason to doubt that being the case, or doubt that that was the intent. I say was because today rates have been going up again, and I'm seeing a drastic increase. The consumer price index is a metric that is often used to judge, well, how it is inflation, and you start noticing, okay, well, how does this past month look for in regards to inflation? And it's still kind of on this not super high, but upward trajectory. And I do wonder what could happen in the next few months as far as if they might change their strategy from the standpoint of maybe raising interest rates. Now, I say interest rates, I mean the Federal Reserve, which then leads to changes in interest rates for mortgages. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I still think there's a pretty good chance that there might be a drop from all the things that have been set up to this point. But you start thinking, every time people say that they know what's going to happen, they are often proved wrong. And because there are so many factors and dynamics that come into play to create an outcome. And so to make assumptions to say, I know exactly what's going to happen, is you're setting yourself up for frustration. You can be right a lot of times, but if you're right 60% of the time and you're wrong 40% of the time, well, uh, in gambling, that's good bet. And I don't bet, but I do know that if you're 60% of the time right, that's pretty good. But you're wrong 40% of the time, right? So my point is that that's a lot, and a lot of people are often very, very wrong. People that are smart in the business, they say that they're smart, they are smart, but they cannot predict what the future is going to hold. So definitely don't, well, I say this, the don't is going to lead to my thought about what to do right now, because the market now, we've got a decent amount of supply relative to past few months, but we're still low in supply. And I'm seeing multiple offers come up on houses, specific price ranges, and we'll get into that, but a lot of multiple offer situations. And that's partly because supply is low. Also, because it's the time of year when most people are looking for houses. It is summer, the summertime's coming, but school's getting out in the next couple of months. People are making those preparations to not only list, but also move and get that house, that next house locked down. This is the time. And so you start seeing a lot more activity in this time of year. And so you see more houses at the market, but usually see more people looking at the same time. And that's one of the reasons why I try and suggest, if people can, to find a house, if possible, earlier in the year, January, February, or even December, December and November, because you're able to get a house during a time when less people are looking. The problem with that is that there are fewer houses on the market, which often is frustrating. So again, it's that trade-off, right? I'm starting to see more houses on every day. Like in the last 2-3 weeks, I'm starting to see that increase over hit um, uh, compared to like February, or even parts of March. I'm seeing the increase every day as far as listings on the market. So that is telling me that people are ready to list, and that is happening a lot. But remember that when houses hit the market, because there have been so few houses on the market, the increase is helpful, but you're going to still see, because there are more buyers, you're going to still see a lot of competition. And I'm seeing it right now. And it's all the price ranges, but it depends on what price range you'll see more or less of it. So if you're in the 200, I'm sorry, excuse me, I feel fine, but this congestion thing is really frustrating. Hey, John, hi from Minneapolis. Hey, thanks very much for watching. I appreciate that. So what I'm seeing is lower price ranges, and I say lower, that's relative, but you're talking like 200,000, 250, 300. You know, that's, I would consider entry level, especially in the 250 range. And there are a lot of people that want to buy houses in that price range. The problem is that there are not a lot of options, and the people that need or want to buy in that price range usually need more costs paid, which is understandable. But not every seller wants to help with that. So you find that there are multiple offers, and the person that doesn't ask for as many concessions, if you will, or things from the seller, that whichever buyer asks for less things is, I should say, is usually the one that gets the house. But what does that leave the rest of the people? And like it's getting into the real estate market in that entry level price range is getting more difficult. And so I say that right now, you're seeing still multiple offers. I'm seeing multiple in variety of cities too, not just Virginia Beach or Chesapeake. We're talking Hampton. We're talking up in the peninsula. That's not crazy. So be prepared for um, at least until supply increases. Be prepared for a steady increase in offers or prices, seeing them steadily increase. So what does that mean for the middle price range? 350, 400, 5, maybe 500. We're still seeing more offers there too, multiple offers. But I'm seeing stronger offers between like the 375, 400 to 550 or so, to maybe even 600. When I say stronger, I mean over asking price. I'm seeing appraisal guarantees. I'm seeing a lot of the things that you would expect. I don't see as many waived inspections as I have. I never suggest that, but I see less of that now. But I still see, the escalation clauses. I see, 5, 10, 20, 30 plus over asking price. That's still happening. But again, it's still toned down a little bit compared to what it was in the past few years. So I will say, number one, I would not change your strategy because of that, but it can lead you to some things that can happen. Number one is if you are a bit more aggressive than everybody else, if people think, well, I can tone down my offers, and you're just like, hey, I'll still be aggressive, just not as much as I used to be, you can still get a lot of good houses. And that's number one. Oh, next is next thing. But here's something I've noticed that has happened recently that I want to mention, and this is tied into the cost of houses and interest rates. Is I'm seeing more deals fall through. What I mean by that is I'm seeing houses that a house, let's just say it's 500 and someone offers maybe 510, 520, whatever, get the offer accepted. And they may have asked for a home inspection, they back out. What I'm seeing more is people that are often willing to pay for the house, but they might not be as willing to also buy a house that needs a lot more renovation and be as aggressive to get that house. So if they're buying it and it's not under value, for example, it's going to be a lot harder to get that house get for a buyer to feel comfortable buying that house and it being fully, not fully done or not relatively done. It's like, hey, if I'm paying up for this house, I want to make sure it's not going to have a lot of stuff to do when I move in. Understandably so. So keep that in mind when you're seeing houses go under contract. I've seen it like literally one time, maybe two times, yeah, twice in the last what 3-4 days, where houses that looked like they had multiple offers fell through. And there was one time even a couple of days ago, working with a client, we slid right in and we got it, and it was awesome. But I think my point is we made a backup offer and it got accepted because we were ready to go, number one. And also it was another example of a house that fell through that was in a great spot. It checked all the boxes, but you just never know about which houses are going to fall through nowadays. I'd say 3 years ago, 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. Even last year, but I'm seeing it more now. And again, I think part of that's because maybe some uncertainty with rates. As rates increase, it's like, hey, I'll get this house. I just want to make sure I feel really good about the situation before I close. And the environment's making people a little bit more nervous. So if you're buying and you're looking for a house and you're getting frustrated at finding the perfect house, just stay on those houses that have been under contract for a little while, especially in the first like 3, 4, 5 days. Just encourage your agent. Hey, just check in. Just see if it's still in the market. Just check. And if there's any sort, not on the market, but just check and see if like there's any sort of waffling going on. Because if there is, you can be that next person to slide right in. And it happens more often than you would think, especially now. So that being said, excuse me, just got a message there. Okay. So that being said, I wanted to mention something about pricing and how much houses are costing, because as there is some possible concerns about costs and rates and all that, I think this next thing is going to be helpful to get a perspective on really where we are in relation to the rest of the historical market, like the last 10, 20 years. And so I'm going to show you something, and this is the average. Well, this is the median sales price of the last 20 years in Virginia Beach. And so it is right now, you see 420, March 2020. There we go. Where are you? You see me there? There we go. March 2024, $420,000. And you still see the trend increasing. And it always drops every fall and it bounces back up at the end of the wintertime, going into the springtime. You see those new numbers. Here's that bump up. Here we go again. It's not going to be nearly as much, I think, compared to like 2020, 21, 22. You see that? It's starting to slow down. But I do think this is going to bounce back up more. But you see here between 2011 and 18, 19, kind of a slow increase there. That was below inflation to me, in my opinion. I don't remember what the inflation numbers were at that point, but there was like it looks like 2, 3% or 1%, 2% increase over those each few years. Okay, well, take that section there, and then go back to before the market jumped in 2005 and 6. When the boom hit then. See here, it says to 2024. You got, let's just use, I was going to say 2000, let's just use January. I was going to use January as an example. January 2024, the median sales price in Virginia Beach was $208,975. Let's just say $209,000. Well, if you go 20 years, start over. If you associate an average inflationary period every year from 2004 to 2024, say that's 20 years, and you say, well, let's just say inflation is, I think, average, and don't quote me on this, but I think it was about 3.7%. Between 3 and 4 was what I think average was. I was using 3.7% for this math. But if you use 3.7% inflation from 2004 to 2024, if you go from 2000 or from 209,000 up to 3.75% inflation to through 2024, the new number, the new that number, if the prices just followed inflation, the prices would be over $430,000. Interesting. So what happened there? Well, we did see a jump in 2005 and 6. Then we saw a sag, and we saw a long lag for a long time where I think people just weren't paying much attention to real estate. I mean, partly just maybe just because it wasn't the thing. We just gone through this big financial crash, and so people weren't really focusing on real estate. In the meantime, as our last 4 years have created a significant increase from the early 2020 up to 2024. If you're using just inflationary numbers as a guide, we are actually still kind of low, if not pretty much right on target from what a lot of inflation numbers could indicate. So my point there is to say that plus interest rates being around 6.75, 6 or 7.5, somewhere in there. Back in 2005, that was about the same interest rate. So yes, the prices are high relative to 4 or 5 years ago. But over the course of the last 20 years, I would argue that they're not actually that high. They're possibly on target or on track to what you might expect if the highs and lows did not exist. It was just a straight plane. So that tells you a lot about where we are in the market. And I would say that I never would suggest someone to say, do something that you can't afford or throw caution to the wind or whatever. But I'm not seeing these prices drop just for any sort of like, well, what goes up must come down. I mean, I understand if there's emotion in a market, and if there's some helium in that, like especially a stock market, you start seeing those prices sag. Okay, well, right now we've got a lot of limited supply. People are looking for houses. And until rates drop, the people that are holding their houses, a lot of them aren't going to feel as comfortable selling unless they really have to sell, because they don't want to buy a house at 7% and sell the 3% rate. So, yeah, John. Oh, hey, Fairfax. Oh, great. Yeah. Hey, and yes, it does seem that way. And I'm not trying to negate. Oh, sorry. By the way, hi from Fairfax. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scroll past. I apologize. It's perception, right? It does seem like they're high. And it's not that it's not that things aren't expensive, because again, comparing what we were at now to where we were 3 years ago, the same house costs twice as much. So it feels like we are in a spot that feels unsustainable in my mind. It's like, well, this doesn't feel normal. But when you have quick changes, that's what often leads to that feeling. Is what I'm saying is, I wouldn't just use that as an indicator of what might happen in the future as much, especially if you look at the conditions currently as far as how many houses are on the market and how many buyers there are. And so I don't think again, this is drastically different than 2021 and 2022 or 2020. You're not seeing the same thing. Now, I will say a lot of people have historically, a lot of people have also said, oh, well, back then people were buying the interest rate. Yeah, that's what a lot of people were doing. Not everybody. And I think that's a little bit of a revisionist history, because that's what you should have been doing. Not talking to you personally, but like that's what someone should have been doing. But a lot of people back in 2021, 2020 were buying like, oh my gosh, I need to be aggressive because I don't want to lose this house. Yes, it was helpful that the rate was cheap, but at that point, no one was thinking that the rates were that low. Very few people relative to what could have been, because we were so used to the rates that we were at. Like, I mean, when rates were at 2.5%, 2.75%, going to like 3.5 felt like, oh, what's going on? The rates are shooting up. 4%. Oh, fours. Whoa. 5. Oh, it's all perception, right? So, so back then it's easy to say now that, oh, well, people were doing the smart thing and buying interest rate. Yeah, well, it didn't seem like that in the moment. It was like the separate byproduct, but it really, people I talked to, I was trying to encourage people to say, hey, if you're buying the rate. The deal is the rate. You're getting a house because of this payment, because this might not happen again. And even I personally regret not trying to get more property based on those interest rates at the time. But again, it's like I didn't even know how long it was going to last, right? I'm not saying I'm the super smart, but I feel like I'm in this and know, generally speaking, what's going on here. So so I just say people will always say like, yeah, that was a smart move back then. Yeah, well, people didn't realize it at the time. So now we're in the 7-inch range. This is not too crazy of a rate. It just is very expensive relative to that point. So that leads me to back to the concept about interest rates is a lot of people will say, well, buy a house and you can always refinance. This is true. This is true. That is correct. You can do that. And as a general rule, I think that's okay. The thing I would be very cautious on is assuming that that rate is going to drop, which leads to people doing stuff like doing adjustable rate mortgages, ARMs, if you will, ARM, which means you get a loan that is X percent now, but it could adjust, and you're kind of gambling on the idea that in X amount of months or really years, you can refinance and get a cheaper rate. Well, that doesn't always work, And so to get back to my topic about with rates, and I would say that please don't make any assumptions that that rate's going to drop and it will be worth it to refinance. You might hold that longer. So back to the concept then of, well, should you buy right now? Number one is I wouldn't suggest doing anything you don't feel comfortable with. Number one, but if you can afford the house that you're going to go after, that's fine. My suggestion is just not to go after a house well over and above what you're comfortable with the expectation of, okay, if I do the math and like if the rates when the rates drop, I can get this cheaper and then I can afford it. That's to me not the way to do it. And if you get a lender that can help walk you through that and to say, hey, well, listening to you and saying what you can afford and helping you determine that, then it will be a lot easier of a process. So I would definitely suggest just being very careful, not worried, but just come in with the eyes wide open and don't try to be super aggressive on a house that like this. Let's put it this way: make sure that whatever payments you're getting when you buy the house is the amount that you can actually afford, and don't do it based on the projection of a future amount, if that makes any sense. So now we've talked about the lower price range as far as what's happening. Middle price range, 350, 450, 550 into 6. Now into the over 650 range. Now we're talking into a specific spot where, upper price range could be anywhere from, 7 to 5 million, right? But once you get over 750, 775 into the 8 range, you're starting to see a couple things. Houses sit a little bit longer, and also fewer houses go under contract quickly. I guess it's kind of the same thing. And part of that reason is because, number one, it's expensive to, let's just say $700,000 house. If you have a $700,000 loan, for example, you might be paying between $5,000 and $6,000 a month, maybe, or $5,200 or $5,700, whatever your rate is, all that. But you're paying a decent amount, and so if you're doing, goodness, even half of your pay, that's $130,000 in the most extreme. I wouldn't do this case. So you're making some sizable amount of money. You had no debt also. And that's all, again, talk to your lender about all these like specific numbers, because I'm not the loan expert, but I'm going this based off of experience. And, once you get over into the, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 price range, those payments are going to increase. And also you have conforming loan limits. Once you get over, I think, what is it now? 750, 775. I need to make sure and look at that. But once you get over, I think it's 772. I can't remember. But conforming loan limits are basically the amount that your interest rate changes once you go over a certain loan amount, generally speaking. And you can talk to different lenders and, to talk to a lender that you trust, again, as far as getting this information. But once you get over a certain range, you have to pay more down to get below that conforming loan limit, or else you're paying a higher interest rate. And so that's another reason that keeps the prices in the 8 and up, or maybe 850 and up, keeps those houses on the market a little bit longer, because there are fewer people that either can afford or want to put down enough to get that rate lower. And if the rate's higher, in the higher price range, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm paying even more. And so it can be expensive. So fewer people are willing to do that right now. Hey, Katy, Texas, nice to meet you. And I hope you watched the eclipse. I did not watch the eclipse, and I couldn't. I watched it in 2017, and it was amazing. And I tried to go to a friend of mine's in Arkansas, couldn't make it, but I love eclipses. I mean, I've only seen one, but I wanted to go to this one badly. And so anyway, hope you were able to see that. But separately, back to real estate. So I would just say, as you get into the 800-900 price range, just be aware that, there are still going to be houses because there's just supply is still lower. To still be prepared to be aggressive, but you might not need to necessarily as much. And so this leads to another concept I think is important for every price range, is that when a house hits the market, let's say it's heading to market on a Thursday, there is one camp where people think it's the busy market. I got to be ready and I got to jump quick, which is extremely true, right? But the question then is, how quick and how aggressive do you have to be when you're being quick? Well, some of that is dependent on the seller, how the seller and the agent that is representing the seller perceives the market. Because if you see a house that hits the market on a Thursday, and maybe the seller and their agent are thinking, I'd be shocked if we get asking price, but that house is going to be a 4 or 5 offer house or whatever offer house. If you're quick enough, you make an offer fast enough, but it's strong enough, just strong enough to where they are enticed by this offer and they're not sure if they're going to get another offer, but you are strongly sure that they're going to get multiple more. You might be able to slide in there and get it accepted and beat everybody else out. So the speed is becoming very important right now, because 2 years ago, almost everybody was not, you post a house, list a house on Thursday or Friday. There was no reason. I say no reason. There was almost no reason to even expect for them to accept any offer before the weekend. So you kind of knew that going into it, relatively speaking. So you kind of like, hey, we're going to get eight offers. Let's let it play out. Hey, take off, go on vacation for a couple of days, come back, and we'll figure this out. That's usually often how it went. But now you don't always know. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So if you can go in there and be first matters more in this market to me than it did in any other market in the last 3 or 4 years. It was back before 2020 where I could suggest somebody, hey, if we can come in real quick, we can make an offer real quick and even ask for closing costs for goodness sakes. They might still take it before someone else comes in and offers more, because you don't want to be competitive with other people, right? So all that being said is, it's all about what the seller and their agent perceive the market to be will affect how quick or how successful your offer might look when it's done quickly. So that being said, don't expect there to be a flurry. If you've been in the market, before in the last few years, there could be a little bit of, I want to say, not anxiety, but like you remember how those markets were and you're like, oh, I got to do this again. You might not have to do that, but remember, being quick can help. And those little nuances and those offers can really help. And it gives the seller and their agent more of an encouraging, a receptive feel of how your offer is coming across them, if that makes any sense. So I don't know. I think being quick is better than it used to be. It's more helpful than it used to be. So please do that. Being quick and also being ready for a deal to fall through because of other people's uncertainty that you can capitalize on. John, do all cash offers have an advantage in this market? Great question. I love this question because I have learned a lot over the last 10, 15 years myself about cash. Cash is king in a lot of different types of things. Cash is like, good example maybe could be yard sales. I'm not diminishing cash offers in houses because comparing it to yard sales, but having cash right then can help. Cash offers in this market are not what they used to be, or not what you would think that they would be. Cash is king, that phrase. It can help. I can't tell you how many times a client I work with that has a loan will beat the pants off of a person that has cash, because the cash buyer always assumes that they have leverage that they really don't. a lot of the reasons are because a lot of offers that are conventional now are strong offers. They've got money in the bank. They've got the down payment. They've got maybe appraisal guarantee amounts. They've got the ability to sometimes even have a waived appraisal. That is one of the things that a cash offer helps with. But if you don't even worry about the appraisal, it's not as much of a deal either. So cash can help. Sometimes cash is worse. I've seen situations where people are more worried about cash because it can be more fraudulent. Is one less Not having a lender is one less hire or entity that is involved in the process that can keep that buyer in check, if you will, or accountable. So you can, I've literally been involved in a situation where a client was buying a house cash and they literally just fell off the map at closing. The day before closing, they stopped answering their phone and they had cash and there was nothing. They were just gone, disappeared. And so the people that have had that happen before, and I will tell you, fraud has become more and more common in the market in the last few months and years. I've talked to title company owner recently about this, about how there have been tangible issues with fraud in the past few months and maybe a year or two, that had not gone away. And so people are very cautious about large purchases, large cash purchases, wiring, transfers, all that stuff, to where it's a shame for the person that has cash and they think, well, I've got cash. Why does no one want my money? It's not that no one wants your money, but people are very, very aware, or very acutely concerned, or very particular about making sure that the person is not only real, but has the money. So I've had to go overboard with. I've helped with someone get a house recently that was paying cash, and I had to go overboard to make sure, talking with their banks, making sure the bank could communicate with the other side, like being several steps to make sure that the seller was convinced and certain that our offer was real, and the buyer that I had was working with had real money and was ready to buy. Like, it is a real thing. So cash still has strength. It's not that cash is a problem, but just know that there are a lot of things that go through people's minds when cash comes up that doesn't always equate with a lender, or with a loan, because a lender is checking behind them. They're doing a lot of due diligence that they have access to quickly, that it's hard to do with cash. So that you have an offer, like a situation with, like, 6 offers on it. Cash is helpful, but it's not always the case. Especially, and this is another thing too, if you have cash, but you have to sell your house first and then you have the cash, it doesn't help as much as you might think when you're making you're buying the house contingent on closing on your current residence, or wherever, whatever house you're selling, to then pay cash. Cash sounds great, but you still have to sell your house. And so that contingency still plays a big factor, and can be a very, can be a big drawback. And it's not an automatic, again, it makes it even harder, I guess is what I'm saying. So, yeah, cash can be helpful, but definitely use it to your advantage, but it's not an automatic slam dunk. Helpful though with examples that are with houses that aren't lendable. So that's a different example. Like, if you find a house that, lenders won't touch it, too much damage, for example, or maybe a condo that is not certified for VA or FHA loans, or even, there are certain situations that there are a lot of fewer loans that are involved. Then having cash can help offset those concerns too. So it's not, again, it depends on the situation, but it's more for investor, like rehab situations, that can help the best. But, it just depends on the situation. So we're shopping 55 plus communities in Williamsburg. What are your top 3? Do you expect any more inventory anytime this year? Well, if it's for someone if you're talking about people that are areas that are designed for 55 and up communities, not necessarily just specifically 55 and up requirements. I mean, we wouldn't even say these are designed specifically for, but I'm a big fan, generally speaking, of Ford's Colony. I've become more of a fan of Kingsmill recently. Depends on the whys or the reasons why, right? So, for example, Ford's Colony is pristine, and if I could easily play videos while I'm doing this live, so you could see some drive-throughs and street views, you know what I'm talking about. But you'll see a lot of it's just an awesome, it's a pristine neighborhood, right? A lot of neighborhoods, a lot of houses, but they look great. I'm a big fan of Ford's Colony. The things that people don't like about Ford's Colony is that they are pretty strict. And I wouldn't say that they are just hold your feet to the fire all the time, but they are pretty strict. And that's why the area looks nice, and people are very aware of that. And so there's I guess, a double-edged sword, if you will. And then you compare it to Kingsmill. I've seen Kingsmill kind of fall off over the last several years. It's probably too because it's just an older neighborhood and you start seeing those houses, they're just an extra 10, 15 years older in some cases. And so you start seeing the turnover happen a little bit more in that area. But even in the last like month, I'm seeing the security. If you're into security, this might be a positive or negative. Security has I can see that being bumped up. It's harder for me the clearance to get in every time has been a little bit more complicated than it used to be in Kingsmill, whereas it's a lot more loose in my experience. So Ford's Colony has always been like that. Kingsmill has upped their game. And so if you want security, they both, I think, are definitely in much better positions. I would say they're stronger than they used to be, especially Kingsmill. So I do find that to be helpful. I still kind of like Ford's Colony better than Kingsmill myself. I'm not as big a fan of Governor's Land. Part of the reason is because you're paying a lot per month. Like, for example, you have to buy into either the golf package or leisure package. Several $100s a month. I think it's $8 now. I can't remember now. I think it's $8. And you're also paying, I think it's over $30,000 now up front into the community. Excuse me, I got something in my eye. And again, back to comparing the security, I'm not necessarily one that's like, I'm not a big security, need the gated communities type personally. But if you want that, Governor's Land doesn't even have a gate. You just kind of drive in. So it's like, well, how does that work? So, but you do have other things like the nice marina in the corner. It's a nice nook in the Governor's Land. But you're buying into that specific situation a lot more. So Colonial Heritage, I like. If you want something a little bit more of like on the like 556 range and under, I would consider Colonial Heritage, but I still like Governor's Land. I'm sorry, I like Ford's Colony and Kingsmill the best. And also more options for price range in Kingsmill than Ford's Colony, just because there's just more styles, like more condos, more townhouses than what you'll find in places like in Ford's Colony. So I hope that answers your question. So, any more questions, let me know. I wanted to cover a lot of the stuff I covered. I wanted to make sure you got some context on the inflation in relation to the prices and knowing that, hey, it feels wild right now. It feels like houses are overpriced. Yeah, relative to 5 years ago, but relative to the last 20 years, not sure. And I'm not so sure we don't have another run up possibly. If rates do drop, I could see that happening because I'm talking to a lot of people too. They're like, hey, I'll do this when rates go down, and I'll buy the next house when rates go down. Well, if that's 5%, 5.5%, we're 1.5%, 2% away. That's a lot of drop, but it's possible. So I'm the first to tell you, I don't know what's going to happen when it comes to future rates, but I do know that a lot of people have been wrong over the last few months and years because a lot of things can change. And just because you hear that, oh, the Feds are going to drop their rates. Oh, they haven't. They're expecting to. When's the last time you heard someone say that they were going to do something and they decided not to do it? In every walk of life, right? So the Federal Reserve is no different. So, man, real moment. Sorry, I'm getting a tickle on my nose too. I'm so sorry. So be prepared for the surprise. And so just please do not automatically pay aggressively for any house expecting rates to drop. Just be very aware of that. And so, if it's a matter of, hey, your price range was 700, maybe look in the 625 range if you're not comfortably at 7 or 575, or see where that range is. And that's one thing I try and help people do is if they're looking in a certain price range is, okay, what is actually the cheapest you can get to get everything you want, really? If you don't need to do 700, don't do 700, do 550. If that's going to work better for you, you're more excited, get the house that you want, the neighborhood that you want, you don't have to pay as much. But there are certain thresholds, and if you have any questions, please ask me. You can comment, email, call, text, and I can kind of give you some ideas of like thresholds and uh, certain types of things you'll find in different price ranges and things I like in different price ranges. But that leads me to the next thought is, have any questions, please reach out. That's my cell phone. And please understand that if I don't answer right away, it's okay too. I'll just let me know and I will email you back or whatever. Just let me know. There's my email address there. And my website, you can peruse my website. A lot of same Sansalone information on my stuff. So I've wondered, like, gosh, my name can be hard to spell. So I'm sorry. So email there, phone number there. You can call, email, text at any point. And if you have any questions about relocating, I'd love to do that. And John, I have another good question. Sorry. How do you think the recent legal decision with the NAR will change the real estate buying and selling process? Oh man, great question. Okay, number one is, I gotta say this just because back to hey, I know a lot of things, but I don't know everything. So I'm not an attorney, and this is still up. There's still a lot of changes to be had, I think, or at least there's still a lot of unknowns that are still in play, I think. There are a lot of news stories that are drastically twisting what's happened. And it definitely bothers me because there are a lot of sites, but news outlets that are giving a portrayal of things that really have not happened, or the current changes that are being made didn't really change what the seller, the news sites are saying. So stuff like, mandatory commissions getting slashed and 6% is over. Like, so number one is, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm giving my opinion, but my experience, this is another thing too. This is a national thing. So there could be different examples of things based on whatever you're watching. And so that's where it's partly comes into like, hey, well, where are you watching from? This might change some, but the compensation in here has always been negotiable. So you didn't see like some standard thing here. So the idea of it being a standard thing and now it's being negotiable. Okay, well, shocker, that always has been negotiable. So that's nothing new. The thing that I'm worried about is that I don't want people to be misconstrued the situation where it's like, well, now that it's negotiable, which again, it already has been, now sellers are going to drop the price. House prices are going to drop. Well, think about this. If you bought a lamp for $20 and now there were people in the lamp market that were also paying $20 for a lamp, for the same lamp. There were 10 other people buying that same lamp for $20. If there was something that indicated that, well, I'm trying to find something that had included another intermediary, but my point, maybe not a good analogy here. And you're like, what is he talking about? Just because if there was a negotiable number, even not just compensation, but any other thing that a seller, quote unquote, doesn't have to pay. Okay. Well, if the market is saying that someone's paying $500,000 for this house, why would a seller drop their price because of anything else that happens? No, they're going to sell it for as much as they possibly can. Just the same with like houses for sale by owner. You start seeing houses that are listed on for sale by owners. Well, they're not dropping their prices because they're like doing somebody a favor. They're trying to sell their house as much as possible. So keep that in mind, because please don't expect prices to drop just because there's some bunch of news out there. The seller's going to still try and sell their house for as much as possible. And they're not like, hey, if someone buys it, without representation or whatever, and they're going to try and pocket as much money as they can with or without, you know what I'm saying? So I guess my point there is to say that don't think that prices are going to drop just because of something involved in this. Now, my point is, I think I'm a little bit concerned from people that are if there are situations if there are more negotiations and it may affect the lowering priced people that can just barely get into the market to begin with. Now they got to maybe pay more in some of those other negotiable situations than they could have otherwise. If they got to pay more out of pocket, I mean, closing costs are expensive as it is. Down payment is expensive as it is. So you might find that, I mean, people may not be able to buy, which if that happens, could in theory drop prices if there are enough people that can't afford it. But at this point, people are still affording and wanting to buy. So I'm not seeing that yet. So, but I guess all I have to say is we'll see. I honestly don't know. But at this point, haven't seen much change. Again, prices haven't changed. So we'll see how that happens. But it's a very interesting situation there too. But yeah. So that being said, if you have any more questions, let me know there. But also, hope that I answered your question, also, John. But here's my phone number. Here's my email address, and here's my website. You can call, text me, email me at any point. And if you have any questions, I'll answer as fast as I possibly can. And if you're planning to move to the area and you need help as far as strategizing and planning ahead, if you are doing that, let me know when you're coming, and I can plan out some specific things that I've had feedback from people as far as the things that help people the best. And I'll kind of give you a kind of a step-by-step kind of a plan between now and then. So you have a better idea of what to expect when you get here, and also what to do when you get here, and how to strategize while you're here to make the best decisions for when you actually buy. And if you can't do that before you get here, also fine too. Just let me know your time frame, because I can plan that out, help you plan that out, based on the specific things that you might be looking for in your move, in a house, the living situation, all that stuff. So if you have any questions, feel free also to leave a comment below. And that's got 46 minutes. I can't believe I just kept going and didn't stop talking. I love doing this though. I'll keep making videos every week, and I'm going to try some new stuff as far as my neighborhood discussions and tours too, that I'm going to start trying some stuff, and you'll see a few new things coming in the next few weeks. So yeah, I'm excited about that. So otherwise, that's it for tonight, and I'll wrap it up here. And thanks for watching. Thanks for talking. Thanks for asking questions. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.